Okay, well, welcome back to Trust Your Gut. My name is Erin Trent Johnson, and I am here with Dr. Antonio Aragona, Dr. A, um, Doctor of Ayurvedic Medicine, and we are here for the August edition of Trust Your Gut. We are here in late summer in what definitely feels like monsoon season. And we are excited today to come back in our conversations about deep holistic health within the context of culture, spirit, and ecology. So, welcome, Dr. A. How are you?
Hi, yes, good morning. I'm great. Just preparing the storm, literally and figuratively. We've had a lot of rain this summer, and then there was a couple of weeks where it felt like it was somewhat normal with like what summer should be, for this time of year, for this geographic location, things like that. And, now we're coming towards, what's the end of summer kind of thing. And so we're looking at a lot of different things in the next coming weeks between like the seasonal transition, Ritu Sandhi to which Sandhi are we doing the change from, which is like basically summer to fall, and these are all the things that are kind of percolating in the consciousness right now. And and then, I wanted to talk about the, urges that should be suppressed and non-suppressed. And so it will coincide, these things will coincide partly with the seasonal transitions and how like the sun starts to set earlier. And so darkness increases in the atmosphere, and what this means for like sleep patterns and what this means for, you know, um, when we eat. And then also because we have this daylight savings time concept and experience that, still exists, that throws things off, and what that means for the circadian rhythm, what that means for the biological clock, the Ayurvedic biological clock. So there's a lot of little tidbits that we'll bring in. And so we can start with just sort of like a recap of what summer is in Ayurveda, and this is a shloka that just talks about Adana, which is like there are two main time, basically there's several seasons in Ayurveda. There's 3 seasons, sometimes 4 seasons, there's 2 seasons. It just depends on what you're going to be discussing and what context and things like that with Ayurveda. It's very multifaceted that way. So we'll talk about the general like 2 times of year or 2 main seasons or kalas, Adana Kala and Visarga Kala. And so Adana Kala is basically, and I'll read the shloka. Tatra ravir bahir dadhano jagatha sneham Vaya vasti vraruksha kopashoshantaha. Shishira vasanta grishma shyata kramamam. Rakshmam utma padyanto rukshan. Rasam stiktakshayakshatkatu ma kabir vadantyo. Nridnam darbalya mahabhavanti. And so basically, what the saying is that in Adana Kala, which is the time of year the sun with its hot rays absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. So summertime, sun is at its highest level, basically. But this is also a time of year where things get weakened and depleted because the sun is so prominent, and things are, expanding and growing and blossoming and things like that. And people feel this kind of heightened stimulation of energy, running around and doing things at the beach and hiking and all these things that the sun, which is an expansive quality, there's also a depletion to it because the sun is depletive in its highest moments of the time of year and the time of day. And so this kind of will cause an absorption. So it zaps you. That's why like going to the beach can be tiring. It's not just like, oh, you're so relaxed because you're at the sun, but between the sun and the ocean and the salt and the alchemy of the sun and the heat, and salt can be heating, like you're being drawn out and drying. And so people sometimes come in at the end of summer very dry because They were at the beach, but it's drying. You're on a beach, the sand absorbs. And the heat is magnified into the sand and it absorbs. The ocean is heated, the salt is exacerbated in the context of the salt plus the minerals, but the predominance of salt, and then the sun is beating down and even just heat and depletion. And so this absorbs a lot of the energy, it zaps the prana. And normally if there's a healthy sense of digestion within the context of homeostasis, digestion is a little bit weaker during this time of year because the heat is dispersive in the system, so it's going more toward the periphery than the actual like alimentary canal and stomach. And so the appetite is not as prominent. And if there is a prominent appetite during summertime, that is usually indicative of a person's constitution and or imbalanced state, because the normal state is for like, there's a little bit of a less appetite. Maybe I'm not as hungry. Maybe I'm still eating 3 meals a day, but not as much. Or maybe I'm eating 2 meals a day and I normally eat 3 meals a day this time of year, et cetera, et cetera. So this is indication like what's happening physiologically in response to the season. And so in the Dana Kalab, which is covering, basically spring, summer, and like late winter, early spring. This is when the sun is increasing in the atmosphere, and so this is the Adana Kala effect. And then the Visarga Kala effect is the opposite as we're going into like fall, winter, and late winter. This is when the sun is less in the air, and that's a longer day. It's a cooler day. It's kind of, just darker. Darkness is increasing. This creates a restorative effect, a building effect. It's more like it's considered a soma, which is like building and nectar and sort of like replenishment. Agni is Adana, which is Agni is fire. So we're looking at the polarity of like the sun and moon, basically. We're looking at the polarity of like fire and like watery qualities. And so as we're going into the fall, we're noticing some of these things as the summer is doing its thing. And then also, we factor in global warming as expediting certain things. And so these are things to bring awareness. And so for this time of year, I was like, daylight is slowly decreasing with each day, like where a couple months ago, 8:30 was very lovely. And it's like, oh, it's still bright and sunny. And now it's like, oh, it's already dark at 8:30, and then we throw in this daylight savings, which throws off an hour. And so what does this all mean? It's like, okay, well, if we know these two times of the year are governed by like the sun and moon and or two basic big umbrella of seasons, where summer is like great, but it's also depleting, and winter is more building and satisfying and nourishing. And we think about the foods that are plentiful during the time of year. It's like, what are these urges, the physiological intelligence. It's not just, like follow your gut. It's not like just trust your gut. Yeah, this is foundation because gut is the foundation of health. Digestion is the springboard, or the main platform in which things leap from with regard to health and well-being. So in Ayurveda, you know, we have what's called the Adharanya Vega, which is like the non-suppressible urge. And then we have Dharanya Vega, which are the herbs, the urges to be suppressed. And so it's important to think about these concepts as I mentioned them and what this is, in its application. And so basically in between some of the different ideas, there's 13 to 14 urges not to be suppressed, right? And we're like, well, what is this urge? It's like, if you think about urge and what urge means and all of these things, it's like, what is this? And the urge is like this underlying natural physiological intention and also function. It's because of these urges, these 13, 14 urges play a function in body health and well-being overall. And these are the things that we neglect because we don't really think about these things. We just assume because the body is capable of like taking care of itself. It is when we allow it the space to do so, but the mind comes in and gives us different stories and redirects us over and over again. So what are these urges, in Ayurveda? And so Udgara, which is belching, Vata, which is Vayu, which is the urge to fart or flatulence, Purisha, the urge for defecation or to poop, Mutra, which is the urge to pee, kshavatu, which is like the urge to sneeze, trit, which is like the urge to drink water, kshud, which is like the urge to drink to take food, nidra, which is like the urge to sleep, kasa, which is the urge to cough, shrama swasa, which is the urge of breathing on exertion, Jrumba, which is like the urge to yawn, Ashru, which is like the urge to cry or weep or tears, Chardi, which is the urge to vomit, and Retas, which is like the urge for ejaculation of semen, or just general sexual expression. And so, in Ashtanga Hridayam, it's referred to as the 14, Charaka could say 13. It doesn't really matter. The point is like there are these 13 to 14 urges. And so, what does this really mean on a basic, simple, fundamental level? And how do we can apply it this time of year in general? Well, a lot of people are going back to school, either as students or as teachers. And, often the teachers that I have that are my patients, they're saying, I don't have time to pee or poop because this lesson plan to that lesson plan to this class to that class, there's not much time to eat. There's not much time to go to the bathroom. So I wait to eat later, or I eat a snack on the go, and I poop when I get home, which has been 8 hours after I pooped at home. And I have to pee, same kind of thing. Unless your bladder is about to explode, that's when you force it to go, but you shouldn't wait till that point. So, like these natural urges, if you're feeling like you have to burp, there are people that like, a burp's coming up and they try to be very conservative and try to just withhold it, not make it loud because it seems rude or, inappropriate. But, you know, it's a physiological function, and to suppress it will cause harm. Any of these functions to suppress the urges will cause, over time, the dysfunction as a domino effect or a ripple effect in that geography of that particular urge, where it starts from, where its mula is from, where it's originating from. So if I have to poop, but I hold it, it's different if you're like, oh, I have 10 more minutes to make it home and I'm driving and I have to poop. I have to just kind of clench a little bit just to make it home because you're in the car. Yeah, is this ideal? It's not ideal, but 10 minutes is fine. If it's like an hour drive and you pass the gas station, you should stop at the gas station. You don't want to go in public. This is another mental faculty. We understand hygiene, public bathrooms, etc. It's like, what's the cost? If you're doing this regularly, then there's going to be a cost to that suppression. If I'm hungry now, but I'm like, oh, I have to finish this project, so I'm just going to wait until the project's done, and you miss lunchtime, or, lunchtime is usually between 11 and 1. You want to take that yoga class, but you're hungry first, but you take the yoga class first, you're causing harm to the body. If the urge is there to eat, you must eat. If you eat and you still want to make the yoga class, then you have to wait an hour. If you don't have the time to do the yoga class after you ate, then you do yoga class a different time. You cannot sacrifice the natural urges for the things that your mind wants to do because of your day. You just have to reschedule the day, and that's the ideal, because in that ideal state, you're promoting the most optimal health when you're honoring the urges. When you have to pee, you go pee. When you're feeling sleepy at 8 o'clock and you're like, oh, it's too early, I'm just gonna watch a movie, I'm just gonna check my emails, and then you get stimulated and dopamine and cortisol by getting on the blue screens, and even with blue screen covers. If you're sleepy, you go to sleep. If you're staying up late, the certain physiological clocks and the doshas, as they're moving through time and space and through each day, will activate certain things. If you stay up, then you're like, well, now I can't sleep. And it's like, well, I did it to myself, because the natural subtle whisper of like, I'm getting tired. We add in this daylight savings time, which shows off an hour, so then your body has to adjust. It's almost like a jet lag, just a self-induced cultural jet lag. And then you have to, a lot of people are affected by just that 1 hour up or down. That's amazing. And to see the research and how that's, a lot more research has come out showing how that causes sleep disturbances. There's increased anxiety from this daylight savings time versus standard time. But that's a whole different subject. It's out of our control, because reality is that's the overarching thing that's overriding at the moment, because whatever. Um, but nonetheless, when you're starting to get sleepy, you go sleepy. You just go to sleep. You eat when you're hungry. I know you want to ask me things.
You could tell, like, I have the urge to speak. And I think as someone who definitely identifies with ADHD and that urge, the urges I think are such a challenge or a struggle because the urges that come in some ways I can override most of the urges, right? There's I think the urge to pee, absolutely. I will go so long because I'm like hyper focused on something and I will have missed multiple urges for eating, sleeping, peeing, pooping. And then I'm also thinking about the ways in which culturally, right, there are all these messages that say it is acceptable or unacceptable for you to acknowledge these urges. And so, whether that's belching or releasing gas, um, my husband and I have a joke that I'm definitely a sleep farter because because I've been holding it in all day, and that is a reality where I think, well, not so much anymore because I am beyond that. But I think it took me a long time, and it's not just about age. I think there's a lot of ways in which um, we are internalizing these messages that say our urges are inappropriate to be acknowledged or is unsafe. And so I'm really sitting with like the the call to just acknowledge the urge, like, oh, you're sleepy, go to sleep. Oh, but I'm at work. Now, again, um, I have set it up for myself so that I can do that in the fact that I manage my schedule and work for myself. But that is not the case for the majority of society, the majority of people. And so I'm curious how in a modern world, how in a capitalist world that is very much focused on productivity above all else, and we internalize this message for survival, um, how do we address the desire to sleep as soon as we are sleepy? Um, and oh, and and one more thing I was thinking about was, oh, what is it called? There's like um, it's sleep. Oh goodness, it'll come to me. There's like a way in which people, and I am one of these people, will resist. It's like a resistance act or an act of resistance. I need to go to sleep, but I need this time. I have not had time to myself. So I want to do what I want to do right now when I should go to bed. I want to read this book. I want to listen to this podcast. I want to watch TV. I want to stare at the wall. I want to doom scroll. These are urges, or they are, is this an urge? Like, where does this fit? This desire to get my time, to let my mind do what it wants to do when I'm supposed to go to sleep as an act of rebellion or resistance, because this this was suppressed all day.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of pieces here. So the thing is, like, when we think about Adharanya Vegas and these 13, 14 urges, we have to understand the basics of them, which is that they're rooted in physiological function. And so the body has its own intelligence. So if you cut the head off from the body would know how to take care of itself. And so when we want to, when we say listen to your body, trust your gut, come from this deeper inner wisdom, the inner physician, etc., the body is always communicating and it will always communicate in symptoms, whether there's a presentation of symptoms in either excess or deficient. So we look at these cues, these characteristics, these tendencies, and go, something is off. And so it's up to the mind, the manas, to do the discernment, choosing like, oh, what's happening here? And we live in a culture, the current cultural climate, the way things are, is already understood to be unsustainable. It's just not. The speed in which things are occurring. A term in Ayurveda, it's called ati-chestataihi, which is like this busyness, this busy state of mind and always on the go and always so much to do and multitasking. Ati-chestataihi is actually one of the characteristics listed in the chapter on Vata Vihadi, which is like diseases of Vata, that are 80 main diseases of Vata. To create any one of these in general requires ati chestataihi, the busyness, the ongoingness, the multitasking, and this other term that I actually just recently learned about, which I really like. It's about in reference to the ADD, ADHD. In Sanskrit, there isn't like a complete direct correlation, but there's an association based on qualities. And the term for like ADHD-like symptoms, the inability to maintain focus and concentration and steadiness, is anavasti tattva. And so in Sanskrit, there's something for everything. And it describes, when you dissect the word of anavasti tattva, it's like, ah, this inability to focus and inattentiveness and, you know, and ati chastatai, which is like the busyness. Like these are all things that are vata predominant, which are like, the nervous system, it's the mind, it's the chaotic qualities of the mind. And so we have to tame the mind. And so even in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is talking to Arjuna and says, the five senses must be reined in. They have to be brought into this one. The charioteer must take all the five senses in control, which means the mind that's unruly is the we have to find the deeper inner knowing, the buddhi, that's going to be the executive director to the mind, the chief executive officer, and says, I really know. So now I need to use the mind in a proper way. And that requires work, you know. It's continuous practice. In yoga, we call it abhyasa yoga, which is the yoga of continuous practice. So we fall off the horse, we come back on. We keep falling back off the horse, we keep coming back on. This is the nature of the mind and the lifestyle that we live in. The current lifestyle with the busyness and the computers and technologies and phones and this and smartwatches and chips, and this is not healthy. This is not proper. This is anti-natural intelligence of the body. We're using all these external things to like gauge how much am I eating and how's my sleep, and like, oh, if you're able to focus, you know how much you slept. You go to sleep, you fell asleep around 11. You woke up at 7. You calculate. Don't have a thing calculate what's the state of REM and did you go into alpha state or beta state, or like these are all this is where we're getting more and more further away from these things. And so that creates the foundation or this sort of like ecosystem that we're all living in. And so people that have to work night shifts because either they need 3 jobs or they happen to have the job that is the night shift, like a nurse or a fireman or a police officer or a doctor. This is the karma. And so we know that the sleep is going to be compromised. So when we think about the 13 urges, you know, it becomes a ripple effect that eventually when the main pieces like diet is offset and lifestyle is offset, then you cannot expect 100% perfect health. It's just not possible. It just can't. You can't say I want to be completely healthy, but the lifestyle that you're living is counter that. It's not, because something will come head to head, and it's usually with time. I have a patient now, she's in her early 40s, and she has 3 jobs. And she's doing IVF for pregnancy, and the IVFs have been failing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, of course. And then I'm also thinking, how can you produce a child in an environment of a mother that's working 3 jobs? You're going to have to stop the 3 jobs when you're giving birth anyways,
Yeah.
right? Because these are, and that's just an example, is people, people that travel a lot for work. Yeah, you're going to have aches and pains and hip pain and knee pain. Ayurveda will slow those things down, of course. The momentum in favor of the things that are not the best has to be at least counter anchored to some capacity. Because if not, Vata will become that slow breeze that turns into a monsoon.
This is I think, really critical for so many of um, the people that I work with, so many of folks that I coach. And specifically as you're speaking to both the experience of mothers, people who are in caregiving roles, because I'm also hearing people who are first responders, people who are doing the work of care, of service, um, emergency responders. I'm also hearing um, for so many people who are trying to reclaim their time and in ways that are counterproductive. And I remember the term that we were talking about is revenge bedtime procrastination. And this idea that I don't see choice available to me in how I um, spend my time um, during these hours, whether that's about my professional work, my job, my career, what pays the bills, what put food on the table. I need these three jobs to put food on the table and pay for IVF. How will I realize the dream, or how will I become a parent if I don't have the finances to pay for the IVF, right? So the mind is saying there are uh, no choices available. And so I must do this. And then that act of revenge, of reclamation, I'm going to find a way to reclaim my time. And whether that's and I'll speak for myself as a mother and a caregiver for an aging parent with pretty intense care needs. Yeah, I will absolutely find myself like getting my time back when I'm supposed to be going to sleep because I might not have seen the choice point available for me to do something different. And so I'm curious about how we intervene, how we create an intervention um, that works towards getting to this practice. I'm really sitting with the yoga of continuous practice. My work is always about centering the wisdom of the body. And so, yes, how do we pay more attention to the body as a practice? Right? This practice of awareness that is not about the technology, and absolutely have checked my REM and my deep core sleep cycle, um, where we are paying attention at the most fractal level and doing this in a way that allows us to be present with um, our time. And so, yeah, I want to slow down and think about the interventions that might be available for folks who feel like there's no choice.
Yeah, and again, when people feel like they have no choice, that's the springboard that people should at least pause for a moment and go, hold on, what's really happening in life? What's happening in my life? Am I living my life or am I on this conveyor belt? Am I the hamster in a hamster wheel? Like these are the points of reflection. And this is the divisiveness that occurs with the mind versus the body, right? Because
Mhm.
when the body gets neglected, it's going to produce louder symptoms
Mhm.
and it never lies. And
Mhm.
the mind is what interprets, like, I don't have time for this. Oh, I have a little acidity, I'm going to take a Tums. And or I'm tired, but I got to push past this because I have a deadline, and I live that lifestyle that is a deadline. And like, there has to be something that brings you to the present moment, and the body will always bring you to the present moment. And so the louder the symptom, the more present you eventually become, where you're like bedridden. If
Yes.
it takes you to be bedridden or get a diagnosis, I have thyroid issues, I have, depression, I have, cracking skin, or, I have hip dysplasia or something like this, the body's gonna be like very, very symptomatic. It's gonna be very literal, you know. It's like, oh, I can't stomach this. Literally, if you're having a stomach ache, it's like, what does that mean? It's like, oh, well, you know, why did I have a stomach ache? Oh, it's because maybe I stayed up late last night, and then the food that I ate this morning wasn't digested. Like, this is intelligence, and there's the thing is like with Krishna and Arjuna, it's the five senses, the five horses have to be reined in by the charioteer, which is this inner deeper knowing that it takes time to get back to, but it's hard to because the lifestyle people are living, you know, it perpetuates this vicious cycle, and people have to, something for each person karmically, something breaks them out of it more often than not. I have to say not always for everyone, because some people, you know, they'll more easily say like, oh, Ayurveda is not for me. No, because Ayurveda holds you accountable as much as possible, but you might not want to be held that accountable. You want something else that's going to allow you to be enabled in what you're doing and still do the things you're not supposed to and still try to get health. And this is not proper intelligence. That's why like the Vedic sciences of the sciences are the most intelligent, because they come from a deeper, true knowing and a scientific revelation that occurred for thousands of years. And it's like mind is going to be unruly. So we have to put things in place, try to like skirt past the symptoms that get screaming and louder for you to go, oh, I need to make a change now. Because sometimes it's too late and sometimes it's not. It just depends on your lifestyle. But you mentioned desire before. The unruly mind will always have desire. These are the five senses: what I hear, what I taste, what I smell, what I see, what I touch. Of course, it's going to want more of it. It's,
Hmm.
in Ayurveda, I remember one of my professors saying the five senses are like the um, hungry ghosts. They don't stop and go away. And so you have to have this awareness like, oh, I'm being driven by this thing. It's a mental thing that's saying, oh, I think this is different, but this is not clear. Yeah, the part that I didn't get to talk about, which is the Dharanya Vegas, which is the urges not to be controlled, like, and it just reduces it basically to like these five. So if you're thinking where does desire fall in, it could fall in within one or two of these or three of these if you really think about it. But lobha, which is greed, so this should not be expressed, and it should be controlled, right? Irshya, which is like enviousness, or I'm jealous, or not jealous, but it's like an envy. Like I really admire it, envy. Dvesha, which is like hatred, Matsarya, which is like jealousy, and Raga, which is attachment. And so desire can fall between greed, envy, and jealousy and attachment, and the end result, if I didn't get what I want, I become hateful or angry, right? So when we think about these are the things to be controlled, and we live in a society today where we're discussing how we feel, and it's definitely more in Western culture in US that we have to talk about everything and process everything, and we're so sensitive to everything, and everything needs to be understood, and I feel this and I feel this. Eastern, you know continents in Europe especially, it's like Americans are always sensitive and processing, and they're just emoting all the time. Yeah, because we're still a young country. We don't have the proper tools. When we think about the urges not to be suppressed and what Ayurveda is referring to here, implies that the individual has a deeper, fulfilled um, cognitive capacity to properly digest with a mature capacity, like things that are coming up inwardly.
Are you saying the
That's
Western Empire of the United States is emotionally immature?
a little bit. Everything has to be processed. I feel this way. You offended me. I feel really sensitive. I feel really sad. We go through these long, loopy things to kind of like convey how I'm feeling in the present moment. It's just like, it just becomes this whole never-ending story, non-ending story with a period. Like there's no period at the end. It's like, oh, I want to express to you that I'm really feeling, and this is what's coming up for me in this moment. Like it's just like, oh my God, and it's like on a deeper inner place. Like it is important to acknowledge it, but the self, it's the inherent intelligence that's like, I can process this for myself, We don't have enough of these tools, and generations have shown that we went from being stoic to like the opposite end of the pendulum where everything is like having to be processed all over the place all the time with everyone everywhere. Da, 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 da. We don't have the mental strength. And how can we when food is poisoned with artificial coloring, hormones, pesticides, then the environmental pollutants and the elements are corrupted, and then you have everyone kind of having the subtle derangement that we're staying on computers all day long, and now we're seeing more and more AI take over things and robots. Now there's robots in China that are able to, in a preliminary stage, produce embryos and hold a baby like completely to 10 months term in a robot. Like where are we going? This is very
Mhm.
dangerous, you
Mhm.
know. And it's like we're missing that, the yogis knew when you go inward and you really tap into the universal consciousness, there's no technology and AI can't even touch it. AI can't touch what the rishis knew, but this was a deeper practice that we all, we barely have time to poop, let alone sit and meditate for 10 minutes, you know.
Yes,
And this is a
yes,
problem. It's a problem. And no one wants to see it. Nobody wants to do it. Like, I still want to do this and do this and this. Many years ago, I was with an ex and we were catering for this really fancy catering business in Westchester, New York. And the owner catered towards literally very prominent rich families. And so my ex asked me if I wanted to make a couple dollars, and I'm like, I love being around food. I love, the whole hospitality. It was fun. I said, sure. And I was carrying around a tray of bacon glazed with sugar. And of course, it sounds these are the exact two flavors that are causing obesity, diabetes, people needing to be on Ozempic. Like these flavor palette is exactly one of the main causes of like all these things in the tissue that's causing all these health issues. So I'm bringing this tray, and there's this woman, and she's like, oh my, I love this. I'll just take my Lipitor later. And it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be taking the bacon with the sugar glaze, that you have to take your Lipitor later. Like this, just put it down. Is it really worth it? Because you'll get a heart attack. And Lipitor is slowing down, it's slowing the roll of you getting the heart attack. It's not preventing the heart attack. What prevents the
that.
heart attack is by not eating the bacon with sugar. Get the friggin' carrot stick in the hummus, you're better off.
But let's talk, I think this is an important place to slow down. Right. And I think that the overarching culture of I must have it now, I must meet this desire now. Let's I think it's important for us also to get to the root and structural causes, right? And I think this is where, I have so appreciated Ayurvedic medicine and deep medicines that are systemic in their understanding, because this individual could say, oh, I feel shamed by your comments, and therefore this is right. This is you're calling me out as someone who makes poor decisions around my health, and I want to take my Lipitor, right? And there's an entire culture that believes that mindset um, is is serving us well, and so I think this idea that we wouldn't get to the root
Yeah,
cause, which is a cultural mindset, which is a worldview that I think is important for us to consider, and for folks who are trying to make better decisions. Um, and when we get stuck in a pattern that is fueled by shame, no, we're not going to actually be able to change. I'm not going to be able to stop my revenge bedtime procrastination uh, because it is fueled, right, um, by my desire to meet the immediate need, and not to address the root cause, not to address the root cause of how my time is structured, and what I believe about my time, what I believe about the possibility for relating to my time differently. And my sleep, that procrastination, revenge bedtime procrastination, I know has a direct through line to me making poor decisions around my food choices. Um, because I just don't have the capacity to believe that I can make a better decision, or I'm fueled by cortisol,
Mhm.
right, and adrenaline. And this happens, I think, over and over and over again, where we're in this cycle fueled by shame. And I think when we're talking about the ability to be present, to be embodied, and to be in a practice of paying attention um, to these urges, right? I wonder what suggestions you have, or what allows us to be conscious of the ones that we want to control or suppress, and that may manifest in ways that don't look directly like hatred, or greed, or jealousy and envy and attachment, but absolutely those are living there at the root. And so my desire to eat what I want in the moment might be fueled by a deep feeling of unworthiness in this culture, in community, and that deep sense of unworthiness is older than me. It is connected to um, my historical context, my ancestral context, what it means for me to be in a Black woman's body um, in America as a producer of labor. That's going to inform um, how I relate to myself, how I relate to my time. It's going to inform how I relate to that urge. And I don't eat bacon and sugar, but I know that a lot of people do. But I absolutely know that um, I have bacon and sugar like tendencies.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
it's
just want to
it's just a
check in
different
there.
substance that does that.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Right?
yes.
Like that bacon and sugar can be synonymous for like I need to have ice cream before bed, or I have to
Yes.
have, a piece of cake in the afternoon, or I have to eat that sweet
Mm-hmm.
right after I just had my dinner. Like it's all,
Mm-hmm.
um and it's, this is the part that's really the aspect of the mind. And so um you know it's okay to have the desire, but it's to understand like where am I at if I follow this desire, where would it lead me in respect to like what's my physical health and well-being in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's okay to like, oh, I do like a treat once in a while, but if you do like this treat once in a while and that treat once in a while and you plot it down in a 30-day calendar, you'll see how many times you treated yourself. And in a deep level of like psychological development, we have kshaya, which is like depletion. And so from a deep, this void, this depletion, we're always trying to
Mm-hmm.
fill this void and depletion with something external, and it's understanding, a lot of some of this is, like if you're getting proper food, good quality food that's not, you know, um, treated with chemicals that are inappropriate, you have more space for the cells in the body to express their intelligence to go, yeah, I don't want that tasty cake. That doesn't feel good to me. I'd rather make an apple pie. Like
Mm-hmm.
the foundational development is contingent on food intake, but also through the senses. We talked many times about the three causes of disease. There's many three causes of disease, but pranya parada, which is like misuse of intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
asatmendriyata samyoga, which is like misuse of the senses, and parinam, which is like which is basically driven by time, biological time, including like evolution of like what decade I'm in this body, what time of year is it, what time of day, like the direction of time. And so like the misuse of the senses, because the senses are all over and they're going to like and desire everything. Of course they are. But it's like when you start to cleanse properly, within 48 hours, you're going to be creating a list of like, I want this, I want that, I want to crave this, I want to eat this, I just need a bite of this, and da, 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 da. That's like a deep cellular issue that's coming out as part of the cleanse, and that's a good sign. You just had to have the mental fortitude to go, yeah, it's fine. I'm craving cake, but I know I need to do this cleanse. Why am I doing this cleanse? Why am I doing this purge? Why am I doing this sort of like revamping of my diet? Because my health and my mind are compromised. And so the end
Hmm.
goal is like I want to live a longer, healthier life so I can achieve goals and enjoy if I travel and I have that amazing pasta with wine in Italy, or if I go to, India, or if I go to wherever and I want to enjoy this part of life instead of trying to act like every day. Yeah, you want to act every day as if it's your last moment. That's true. But you'll speed that up if you're doing all the things that are counterintuitive and I have no time to eat, or I'm going to overeat because I want to get it all in. I don't want to waste food. Like this is all the intelligence, and we have to like find an anchor. We need to put something in place to start cultivating it properly, you know. And it's hard because Dr. Google and AI Dr. Google are now giving you all this information, and you're like, now I have more information and I'm confused. That's where you come to a person to really sit with you to really scrutinize step by step, little by little, because most people don't fall into a disease just by happenstance or by accident.
That's
It's
right.
like what brought you here? And it starts way before that disease actually manifests itself. Ayurveda, we have the samprapti of disease, which is 6 stages of disease. Most people are at stage, 4, 5, and 6. But if you can catch it at 1, 2, and 3, you can avoid getting that big diagnosis that requires the bigger medicines from pharmaceuticals and things like that, or more aggressive Ayurvedic treatments, because the higher up you are with disease, there is a place where like Ayurveda gets more aggressive with medicines too. Like it has to. It
Hmm.
has to meet where you're at. So if you don't want a Western route, then you have to, a person has cancer and they're like stage 2, stage 3, depending on the cancer. You can go chemo and radiation. That could take like a 6 months process and then you're debilitated. Or you can do panchakarma for like 2 months and that could be very costly because it's out of pocket and you're like, which one? But it's like Ayurveda will meet the aggressiveness that is required based on what could be afforded. But can
That's
we
right.
really afford to compromise the health? Can we really afford the bigger picture through this short term like gratification, this sense of depletion, the sense of void, the sense of like I don't have enough, the sense I need this, I desire it. It's like, is it though? Do I really need this? Do I really desire it? Like you have to really sit with it and see like if I do this, then that will happen. Karna karya,
Hmm.
like cause and effect. It's like I probably shouldn't overeat, but I'm going to because I don't want to waste the food. Or, someone made this food for me and I can't say no. Or like all the stories. It's so much storytelling. The mind is storytelling. The body's like, I'm not hungry. But you go somewhere and you're like, oh, I made some food. You want some? You're like, okay. It's like, no, you should not.
So this is, I
Or
think, a
or if you do in that moment, just know that that happened to be the one time that month that you did that and you just suck up and you fast the next day and call it a day. Like there's intelligence that has to be required and has to be cultivated. Intelligence is not cultivated, and currently people's memories are getting shorter and shorter. Even if you don't have the official diagnosis of ADHD, people have short attention spans.
yes,
And
that's
it's like,
right.
speak to like a phone rep for something, whether it's Verizon or Netflix or something, and the amount of times that I have to repeat something, and I'm just like, wow, you really have like a fish's memory. Like it's like I'm like, wow, you can't really. I just gave you the information you asked for. You asked me for it. I gave it to you as a bullet point, and you're like, so what was the address again? I'm like, I just told you. Like,
Hmm.
really? It's like 2 seconds you lost it. Like, it's a shame to see this kind of decline. And it's, and I watch it. I watch it everywhere. Like anyone that's in human services, personal, any kind of service industry, you know, like waiters now have to write more down versus the waiters I knew like 10 years ago that they were like, boom, done. Here's the menu for today. What's your order? 5 people. Boom. I have it all in my memory. Like it's like this is a deficit. This is mental. This is definitely like, and of course it's gonna be psychological effect and I'm depleted and staying up late, and I'm gonna eat crappy food and the crappy food's gonna make me sleep crappy and lack the motivation, lack the clarity and all these stuff. Of course. And then you have the irony of people that are like, I'm going on this 1 week retreat to reset in the Bahamas or, in India or in Alaska, and it's 3 meals a day and meditation 3 times a day. And you spend $7,000 for this week to come back and go like, I'm going to change my life. And I can say from over 2 decades of doing this, half those people actually continue with that.
Hmm.
So why you had that seed dropped, that's great. I appreciate all the seeds that are dropped to like stimulate that deeper intelligence. And part of this is karma. Part of it is your own self-creating karma. We talked about karma that you create in this lifetime, Purusha karma, and Daiva karma, which is like last karma that there's this dance always playing too. And this is what ties into the astrology. So of course your tendencies, and this is your tendency, and but mind is mind. Mind can go past the astrology. That deeper intelligence, a deeper Buddhi doesn't even care about the astrology. It's like, no, you just have better chances of certain things with certain planets and certain parts of the houses and all these things. But mind is mind. Jesus wasn't ruled by his astrology.
So an entirely different podcast that we might do next. But I want to close out, I think, with what really seems like a call to be in a practice of paying attention to our urges. Um, and this is a deep, slow, intentional, every day you get another chance to pay attention. Um, and so the urges, the 14 urges that we want to ensure we do not suppress, that we are paying attention to their need to be expressed.
Yeah,
And then the five urges um, that we want to pay attention to, um, and to be in a practice of mindful attention and uh, and I'm hearing suppress and control. I think there's an invitation to get to the deeper root of those urges, and that's definitely something that we can work with folks on in a holistic approach to our health and our leadership. I want to thank you, Dr. A, for today. And we will be back in September for the Trust Your Gut podcast. Dr. A, where can we find you?
yeah, you can find me at stillpointayurveda.com, and I'm always taking on new patients, whether near and far, local in
Mhm.
person or through telehealth, anywhere around the globe. I'm international.
Yes, yes. Well, I look forward to seeing you next month. And in the meantime, take good care.
Yes, thank you.